Hello, everybody. Let's talk about the Bush-Clinton initiatives. Now, I'm going to kind of keep this one on the gentlemanly side because Babs just passed away, and I hear that Poppy, Big H, is in the hospital. He's been hospitalized, and down there in Houston. Now, folks, I want to get right to the heart of the matter. I want to talk about the weapons, the voting and the weapons, and all the fraud that's been associated, all the fraud that's been associated with the Bush-Clinton initiatives and the arming of the ISIS and the Al-Qaeda and the Mujahideen there in Houston, Texas. And a lot of other weapons walking and gun running and gun walking. And I don't know how there's so many different ways that this swamp has armed the bad guys and the freedom fighters. Of course, they've armed the freedom fighters out of Houston. Like Manuel Noriega and Imelda and Ferdinand Marcos, and the list just goes on and on. Everything from Charlie Wilson's War to Buffalo Airways or Buffalo Airlines, the CIA airline of choice with Evergreen Airways. Evergreen Airways had a huge terminal just on the southwest side of the United States Postal Sectional Center at the Houston Intercontinental Airport back there in the 70s and the 80s. And Joanna Herron King, Jimmy Baker, James Baker, the Secretary of State, and George Bush Sr. and Ronald Reagan, and Congressman Charlie Wilson, and the Clintons, Bill and Hillary Clinton, are fabulously good friends and very close to and operate with the Bushes. And after Reagan, Bush, and Bush and Mr. Potato Head there, old Dan Quayle, Bush and Dan left office, Bill Clinton and Al Gore came in. And the weapons trafficking, the gun running, kept right on going through the Bush-Clinton initiatives out of Houston, Harris County, Texas. Now, folks, I want to bring you to a lawsuit, to a legal action that was before the senior federal judge there in Houston, Lynn Hughes. There's a book, and I guess there's a movie that's been made out of the octopus, all about how the CIA and the Department of Defense and certain elements of naval and Air Force intelligence and all the black bag operators, the black baggers, the black ops boys, were engaged in all sorts of dirty tricks, all kinds of off-the-shelf corporations and off-the-shelf bankster gangsters, and moving money and weapons all over planet Earth from Houston, Texas. Now, you had the Gabadafars and the Khashoggis and the Bin Ladens operating out of Houston, Texas. And the lawsuit that Judge Lynn Hughes was at the heart of was, it was a criminal prosecution, let me correct myself here, and a lawsuit, I guess, in a way, was about Charles Wilson. Not Charlie Wilson, Charles Wilson. He was supposedly responsible for providing over 2,200 pounds, over 2,200 pounds of C4 plastic explosives to the forces of Muammar Gaddafi that were partially responsible for the bombing of Pan Am flight over Lockerbie, over Lockerbie, Scotland. Excuse me. Now, folks, I know this seems to be ranting and rambling, but if you go back and look at the old Houston Post articles and the old Houston Chronicle articles that were written by a man by the name of Peter Bruton and a lady by the name of Kathy Gordon, you'll discover that Houston, Texas, and particularly the uptown area there around the Houstonian, where George and Babs lived in that motel room, which I built. I built that motel room at the Houstonian and a lot of other high-dollar projects all over Harrison, Montgomery counties and Fort Bend County, Galveston County. I was down there 26 years, and I built for the top tier of the real estate development industry, including Century Development, Tramwell Crow. I worked for old George Mitchell of Mitchell Energy and Development. I'd like to give a shout out to former United States Secret Service agent Rick Williams. He's up there in the Woodlands, right around the corner from KC, K-Dot Tuckness's house, and old Judge Barb Sadler and Craig Doyle and Kelly Cook and Charlie Riley and that whole bunch up at Conroe. Marcus Winberry, the city attorney there in Conroe. And you had Roland Carnaby and Bobby Corson. You even had Michael Atkinson and the Atkinson family operating with George Mishner and the crew out of Harris and Montgomery County, Texas. Conroe and Houston and Galveston. A huge weapons trafficking center during the Clinton-Bush initiative. Now, the lawsuit that I want to focus on here is case number 1986-17930. And that's old Judson Witham versus the Western Banks, whose president, Harold Blackshear, Averill Harold Blackshear, I guess his name was, who was an FBI agent, by the way, and he worked for the Texas Banking Commission. Old Mr. Blackshear. And the Western Banks, which were right there next to the Galleria Hotel, where Oliver North and Secord and Poindexter and Bud McFarland and the whole gang from Iran-Contra with North, Secord and the boys, Poppy Bush and the Clintons were operating their Iran-Contra and Mujahideen ISIS operations out of Houston, Texas. Now, the Bin Ladens own the Gulf Manor Airport, right next to the Ellington Air Force Base. You can look up all of this real live, no fooling around savings and loan and banking scandal history. That's for all my California 18 friends out there on the West Coast. And old William Wagner there, old Bill Wagner. This is the kind of stuff that Gary Webb and Mark Lombardi and Brian Quigg and a bunch of other people like Stephen Pizzo, and I can keep right on going through, Martin Mayer, have been writing about with Bill Pack of the Houston Post, and a bunch of other journalists in the area like Lucy Proctor from the Conroe Courier. Excuse me, a little pollen in the air. The reality of this massive international narcotics and weapons running operation, and apparently they've been human trafficking and sex trading and moving children around and all kinds of interesting things through Lolita Island there, the Lolita Airlines of Jeffrey Epstein and the whole swamp. Now, this particular video probably should be one of the cherished ones in the collection of Donald Trump and Christopher Wray and good old Jeff Sessions, Jimmy Comey, and Robert Mueller know damn well what I'm talking about here. Their operations in Houston, Texas, Mr. Mueller, and Mr. Comey, along with Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder and Mr. Ashcroft and Mr. Gonzalez and Ed Meese. Now, we can't pick on Janet Reno because she's hanging out with Babs these days. The massive weapons and savings and loan and banking fiasco, it came out of Texas. This is fascinating stuff, folks. And when you take a real long, hard, close look at it, you find out that the Breton Defender, right next to the Waco refuge of the Branch Davidians, Buffalo Airlines, and that FLIR, forward-looking infrared aircraft, the Defender. Now, wow. I don't know where all these sneezes came from, but you'll have to excuse me. The FBI's FLIR aircraft. Man, this is, I guess we'll call this one the sneezy. Up your nose with a rubber hose. Video about the FBI and the CIA, the Mafia, and George Bush. And I think old Peter Bruton left out the Clintons. George Bush, the Mafia, and the Clintons. And the CIA. And the whole gang from Harris County, Houston, Texas. Wow. I guess we got us a bunch of pollen here. Man, excuse me. I'm embarrassed, but I'm going to keep going. So yeah, we've got this giant swamp, and we've got huge amounts of black operations weapons flowing out of Harris and Houston County. Or Harris and... What's the name of that place up there to Arkansas where all the drug running and Barry Seal and that whole gang were, MENA. The MENA operations of the Clintons and the Houston operations of the Bushes out of Bin Laden Airport there. Right next to Ellington Air Force Base, the Bin Laden Airport. With the Khashoggis and the Gabanafars. I don't know where all these sneezes came from this morning. Give me a second, folks. Wait. Live video. Pardon me. There's a couple of real estate people up around Conroe that know darn well what I'm talking about. Mark Thurnbull, J.C. Devers, the tax assessor and collector J.R. Moore, and then their litigation team, their lawyers, Nelda, Luce, Radabow Blair, and old Jim Blair. Now they know precisely what I'm talking about because they're officed at 1300 Main Street in Houston, the old Western Bank Tower. Interesting address, Nelda, there in the Western Bank. Very interesting address. Judge Barb Sadler. Now to my old friends, District Attorney Peter Spears and Montgomery County Attorney Jimmy Dozier and Frank Bass, and I guess you got a Ligdon and I don't know the name of the other attorney down there. It'll come to me here in a second. The current operations in Conroe around Marcus Winberry and that bunch down at the United States Attorney's Office in Houston. You had the Bin Ladens, the Khashoggis, the Gabanafars, the Contras, the ISIS and the Mujahideen, and the Al-Qaeda, all operating out of Houston, Harris County, Texas, with Congressman Charles Wilson and John Tower and a whole bunch of other people that were squarely and directly involved in moving lots of money and lots of weapons, ordnance, all kinds of ordnance, from the Buffalo Airlines airstrip next to the Waco refuge of the Branch Davidians, David Koresh and his friends, and right next to the Ellington Air Force Base. Now, this video is going to get consummated and concluded here with reminding everybody that Hillary Clinton's missing emails and Hillary Clinton's smashed and destroyed devices. She had a lot of devices, I guess, and lots of servers and probably a bunch of stuff that we haven't been told about, is all currently and directly involved in Christopher Wray's, Special Counsel Mueller, Jimmy Comey, USB, HSBC, Wells Fargo, I don't know, Chase Manhattan, Chase Bank, Chase National Bank Texas, Chase, the same Chase Bank that took over the Western banks for A. Harold Blackshear, 1300 Main Street, Houston, Texas. Check out the history of that building. Ask Nelda Luce Radabow Blair, and somebody you could really find helpful in explaining this to you would be Judge Barb Sadler, Alan Sadler. He knows all about 1300 Main Street in Houston, Texas, along with KC, K-Dot Tuckness, and Charlie Riley and Craig Doyle and the whole gang from up there at Conroe. And I want to give a shout out to the Golden Hammer, old Eric Yallick and Kelly Cook, because this particular subject matter went right down in your backyard. Right in your backyard. Houston had the worst savings and loan and banking fiasco in national history during the 1980s. And trust me, this guy right here and a lot of his friends know all about it. Been writing about it for over 35 years. 35 years, Occupy. 35 years of the Bin Ladens, the Khashoggis, and the Ghabanifars operating with Big H, Poppy. Ronald Reagan, remember Reagan, Star Wars president, and operating a swamp down there in Houston, Texas. And yes, this message is going out to President Donald Trump and the deplorables. Because you see, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to drain a swamp, you're going to have to start asking an awful lot of questions about what in the flying hell the Al-Qaeda, the ISIS, the Mujahideen, Barry Seal, and the whole gang there from Mena and Little Rock were operating in Harris County, Houston, and Conroe, and Montgomery counties, Galveston counties, with James Baker III and that whole gang around the Clinton-Bush initiatives, and Gunwalker, and all this other magical, fantastical stuff that went around the Southwest Depot. Yeah, wow, he knows about the Southwest Depot, the secret black op weapons caches of the CIA and the Black Bagger Boys around the Mafia, the CIA, George Bush, and the Clintons. How about that, Peter Bruton? I think you left the Clinton part off, with Kathy Gordon from the Houston Chronicle and the Houston Post. Now I'm going to summarize this by saying hello to David Dayen and Richard Bowen, and to Mark Stopa, and to John O'Brien, and to Jeff Thigpen, and to Martha Cloakley, and Kamala Harris, and all these famous lawyers all over the country that are involved today in this giant mortgage swindling, real estate swindling operations that were sort of invented by the Bushes and the Clintons. Wow, imagine that. All this real estate scheming and scamming and flipping and dirt dealing is traceable to the Bush and the Clinton cartel, the cabal, the oligarchs of the savings and loan and banking fiasco, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, HUD. Hello, Dr. Ben Carson. Folks, you got a lot of black operations going on, and I don't know what, trillions of dollars went up in smoke with half of the financial accounting computers at the Pentagon and a whole bunch of secret operations that were going on at the World Trade Centers. Oh, and the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. This swamp has been operating for a very long time, Donald Trump. And Jeff Sessions, Bernie Madoff, and Jack Abramoff, they were just the low-level clowns. Kenny Boy Lay and that whole Mossbacher. Heck, he knows about the Mossbachers. Imagine that. No George Michener. Man, I gotta put an end to this video. My pollen meter, my oh shit meter here, I guess, is off the scale. Western Bank, case number 1986-17930. Folks, I'm going to have to leave it right there. My respiratory system doesn't seem to be getting along too well with all this pollen. Hasta la vista. God bless, and we'll see you the next time.